I am Jack Harlan, a homicide detective with the New York Police Department, Brooklyn Precinct. 15 years on the job, I've witnessed every kind of crime this massive city manages to produce each day. From bloody shootouts between rival gangs in the Bronx to unidentified bodies drifting along the Hudson River, from serial killings inside the damp, decaying apartment blocks of the Lower East Side to savage rapes committed in the dead of night. In Central Park, I've cracked a string of major cases, earned the trust of my superiors, have been handed the toughest files on the board. The New York Times and the Daily News once dubbed me the NYPD's bloodhound for my ability to chase a lead to the very end. But no case ever came close to breaking me, came close to shattering my faith in justice and in my own brothers, in blue like the one the press would later name the Death List. It all began on a torrential night in October 2022. New York was bitterly cold, the kind that sliced through skin and bone. A harsh north wind howled down the darkened streets, and the rain came pouring as if the entire bleak sky had been ripped open at once. I was sitting alone in my worn-out office on the 3rd floor of the Brooklyn Precinct, finishing the last Marlboro of the day, trying to shake off the exhaustion from a long shift when the desk phone shrieked through the silence. The dispatcher's voice on the other end was urgent, almost screaming into my ear.
Harlan, we've got a stabbing in a motel on Coney Island Avenue. The scene is brutal. Get here now, don't waste a second.
I drove my glossy black cruiser straight through the thick curtain of rain, red and blue sirens flashing across the soaked pavement, water spraying from the tires like fireworks. Under the streetlights, the Blue Moon Motel was a worn-out, 3-story building peeling paint on the walls, rust creeping along the awning, its neon sign flickering red and blue like it was about to die for good. It was the kind of place junkies, prostitutes, fugitives on the run, and secret lovers rented by the hour, no one asking for IDs, no one caring about real names. When I arrived, the patrol cars had already blocked the entrance. A few uniformed officers stood under the awning, smoking to keep dry, their faces pale as chalk. No one said a word. Room 312 was on the 3rd floor, at the very end of a long, pitch-dark hallway. The door was already open. The thick, metallic stench of blood mixed with vomit hit my nose before I had even fully stepped inside. A sickly yellow fluorescent light hung loosely from the ceiling, flickering as if it were about to die, casting its glow over a scene straight out of Hellwood that made even a seasoned detective like me stand frozen for a few seconds. The victim was a young woman, lying face down on a filthy floor stained with old grime. Her body had been stabbed more than 15 times with a razor-sharp blade, the wounds driven deep to the bone. Fresh blood poured from the deep gashes, forming large pools that soaked and stained the cheap carpet red, spreading all the way to the doorway. Her flesh had been torn open in several places, part of her intestines exposed. The sour odor of half-digested food mixed with the metallic scent of fresh blood and organs, making the air so suffocating it was hard to breathe, as if the entire room were slowly rotting. The horror of the sight was so overwhelming that a rookie began vomiting repeatedly the moment he witnessed it, the sound of dry heaves echoing down the empty corridor. The smell of his vomit only made the room feel even more grotesque, like a living tomb. The strangest thing, the detail that left me frozen for a few seconds, was that the killer hadn't even tried to flee. Sarah Bennett, 28, stood in the middle of the room, her eyes vacant as she stared at the floor. Her right hand was clenched, tight, and on the ground beside her lay an old military knife, its blade still smeared with fresh blood. When we rushed in to restrain her, she didn't resist, didn't scream, didn't attempt to run. She only muttered something incoherent, like someone who had completely lost her soul, like the Walking Dead. We cuffed her and took her to the station immediately. At that moment, only one question echoed in my mind. Why would the killer remain at the scene like that, without the slightest intention of escaping? Preliminary investigation at the scene identified the victim as Emily Carter, also 28 years old, a part-time receptionist at the very same motel. She lived alone in a small apartment in Queens, unmarried, with no children. Her record was relatively clean, though she had been arrested a few times for minor prostitution-related offenses, and once on suspicion of drug involvement. I immediately ordered the forensics team to dig deeper into the Blue Moon Motel. What we uncovered was unsettling. This was no ordinary roadside lodging. It was a key link in a large-scale prostitution ring, tightly connected to Italian and Russian loan sharks operating out of Brooklyn. Many young women had been forced to work there to repay debts, beaten, threatened, and trapped in a vicious cycle, and Emily Carter was almost certainly deeply involved. Even if she was just the receptionist, she was likely the one arranging rooms and clients for the operation. Sarah Bennett, on the other hand, was completely different. She owned a small jewelry shop in downtown Manhattan, specializing in affordable silver pieces and semi-precious stones for tourists and office workers. She was married to Ryan West, a freelance software engineer who worked from home, and they had a 4-year-old son named Tommy. Asterisk through federal and state databases, I uncovered a crucial detail that immediately made the case far more complicated. Ryan West, Emily Carter, and Sarah Bennett had once attended NYU together, majoring in business administration. Emily dropped out halfway through her 3rd year for family reasons, a phrase often used to conceal death, scandal, or personal tragedy. From that detail, I began to suspect this was not a random killing driven by robbery or a fleeting affair, but a personal vendetta rooted in their college years, a grudge that had festered for decades. University relationships in New York are often complicated, love triangles, jealousy over money and status, and sometimes dark secrets waiting for the day they erupt into violence. Sarah was placed in temporary detention pending formal interrogation. With years of investigative experience and a solid track record, I was assigned by my superiors to serve as the lead interrogator. I had prepared a detailed plan, lining up a series of questions to extract the truth from her the following morning. But at around 5 a.m., the detention center called with news that left me numb. Sarah Bennett was dead in her private cell. Preliminary findings from the medical examiner pointed to acute rat poison ingestion, a dose high enough to kill an elephant. Surveillance footage showed her lying motionless on the bed, then suddenly convulsing violently, foaming at the mouth, and dying within just a few short minutes. A body search the night before had revealed no medication of any kind. The cell had also been thoroughly inspected. So where did the poison come from? How could a suspect under round-the-clock surveillance manage to take her own life so easily? The thought of an insider within the police department itself sent a chill down my spine, a rare sensation after so many years on the job. With no direct leads left from Sarah, I was forced to shift the investigation toward Ryan West sooner than planned. He was brought into the interrogation room at 9 a.m. that same day, a sealed space furnished with a metal table, fixed chairs, and a one-way mirror. Ryan was about 30, tall but gaunt, his hair unkempt, dressed in a gray hoodie and jeans. There was a careless, almost indifferent air about him that irritated me at first glance. His wife had just died, yet he showed no visible grief or shock. He sat there scrolling on his smartphone, and the moment the door closed, asked,
"When can I go home? Tommy's waiting for me to cook dinner. He doesn't eat canned food or fast food. He's very picky."
I kept my voice calm and professional. "We need to ask you a few questions about your wife and about Emily Carter." At the mention of Emily's name, Ryan suddenly snapped. He slammed his fist onto the table, hard enough to make the metal rattle and the glass of water spill over.
"That woman is dead. What's the point of being sad now? My wife killed her and I'm heartbroken too, but what's done is done."
I pressed further, using surveillance footage and witness statements to corner him, and eventually extracted a crucial piece of information on the night of the murder. Ryan himself had been at the Blue Moon Motel from quite early on. Traffic, cameras, and the motel's security system confirmed it as clearly as daylight. Ryan West drove his family SUV to the motel at exactly 11 p.m., stopped at the front desk to exchange a few words with the receptionist, a young woman who was trembling when she gave her statement to us, and then went straight up to the third floor. He entered room 337, not room 312, where Emily was killed. The medical examiner determined Emily's time of death to be approximately midnight, with only a margin of error of a few minutes dots. So what was Ryan doing in room 337 during that time? And why did he appear on the very night blood was spilled? I immediately called my longtime partner, Tom Reed, the most reliable ally I had on the force. Tom was a seasoned detective my age, skilled at gathering intelligence outside the crime scene, tailing suspects and cultivating street sources, while I specialized in internal casework, file analysis, and psychological interrogation. We had worked in perfect sync for over a decade, from the major drug bust at Red Hook Harbor to the serial murder case in Williamsburg that had terrified the entire city. Tom, get to the Blue Moon Motel immediately. Search room 337 thoroughly. If you find anything unusual, call me right away. Don't waste a second. Tom arrived just half an hour later, despite the heavy rain. His voice trembled over the phone, a rare thing in all the years we had worked together. I had hardly ever heard such unmistakable unease in my longtime partner's tone.
Jack, you need to get here right now. There's a male body in the closet of room 337, stabbed multiple times. The wounds are identical to those on Emily Carter, deep, precise, filled with rage.
The body was identified as Anthony Russo, 35, a notorious loan shark in Brooklyn known for charging crippling interest rates and providing protection for prostitution rings tied to Italian crime groups. The murder weapon was confirmed to be the same knife used in Emily's case. Fingerprints on the blade belonged to both Sarah and Emily, which meant Emily had once held the knife, likely intending to kill Anthony in revenge, but Sarah had struck first, killing them both in a single, blood-soaked night of madness. Under the crushing weight of undeniable evidence, Ryan West gradually confessed to the entire past. Back at New York University, he and Emily had been deeply in love for more than 2.5 years. They met in a freshman business class. Emily was a beautiful Irish-American girl from Queens with a radiant smile and piercing blue eyes. Ryan was the privileged son of a wealthy Long Island family. With a bright future and powerful connections, their college romance had been intense and full of dreams, a sparkling wedding, a suburban home, children running across a green lawn. Then everything collapsed. Emily's father became heavily addicted to gambling and owed Anthony Russo a sum so large it was impossible to repay. Desperate, Emily turned to Ryan for help. He emptied his savings and even sold his beloved sports motorcycle, but it was nowhere near enough. Ryan's family had money, plenty of it, but his mother, Linda West, a powerful and conservative widow, controlled every dollar and refused to give a cent. She feared that a future daughter-in-law from a debt-ridden family would disgrace them. Ryan secretly approached Anthony to beg for an extension, but it only made things worse. Interest piled upon interest, debt upon debt. Anthony retaliated brutally. Emily was taken to settle the debt. Her father was beaten to death in a dark Brooklyn. Added for failing to pay, Emily herself was raped repeatedly in a cold, abandoned warehouse. Police eventually raided the location and rescued her, but psychologically, it was too late. She shattered. She became distant, consumed by hatred for the world. Under relentless pressure from his mother, Ryan severed all ties with Emily and married Sarah Bennett, Emily's former dorm roommate, in a union arranged by Linda. The marriage between Ryan and Sarah began rotting from within almost immediately. Sarah had long envied Emily back in college. The wealthy boyfriend, the luxury car, the expensive gifts, the lavish trips. Sarah came from a working-class family and had worked part-time at a cafe just to pay tuition. After the wedding, she grew cold, irritable, prone to sudden bursts of anger. Recently, she had begun staying up late at night, kneeling before a small statue of Satan, whispering incomprehensible words as if praying for revenge. A week before the bloodshed, Emily suddenly messaged Ryan through Facebook Messenger, asking him to meet at the Blue Moon Motel to talk about the past, perhaps for the last time. Ryan went because the feelings he once had for her had never fully died, and because he had grown weary of his loveless, quarrelsome marriage. I drove to Ryan West's mansion in an upscale Long Island neighborhood on a drizzling afternoon. $1 million homes line the streets, their lawns trimmed to perfection, private pools gleaming behind pristine white fences. Linda West opened the door. Though in her 50s, she still appeared youthful thanks to regular cosmetic procedures and expensive spa treatments. She wore a soft cashmere sweater, her voice refined, yet strained with fear and anxiety.
Detective, what's going on with my son? You took him away early this morning without giving any explanation.
I briefly explained the situation of the case, keeping my voice as gentle as possible so she wouldn't go into shock. Suddenly, little Tommy, Ryan and Sarah's 4-year-old son, burst out from the wide doorway, wrapped his arms tightly around my leg, and called out in a spoiled, affectionate tone,
"Dad! Dad's home! I missed you so much! Dad, hug me!"
Surprised, I instinctively bent down to ruffle his hair, but he clung to me stubbornly, refusing to let go. Linda hurried over and pulled her grandson away, her voice apologetic and uneasy.
I'm sorry, Detective P has an intellectual disability caused by complications from a high fever when he was a child. Nowadays, he calls any tall man dad. Please, don't take it to heart.
Sarah's bedroom was at the end of the second-floor hallway, dim because it lacked any large window facing the garden. The bed was neatly made, yet the nightstand was cluttered with strange figurines of all shapes and sizes, along with various bead strings and talismans. Linda let out a heavy sigh, her eyes red and swollen.
My daughter-in-law has been very strange lately. Every night she stays up late, muttering and praying for something no one can understand. I've had to scold her several times because I'm afraid the neighbors will gossip, afraid they'll say we're superstitious. The two of them argue day and night. They've been separated for months now. She moved into a separate room.
While searching the house with an official warrant from the court, I found a sleek silver MacBook Air carefully hidden under Sarah's bed, as if she feared someone would discover it. It was protected by a complex password, a bizarre numerical matrix -92130 for 520. That took the tech team several hours to crack. Just as I was racking my brain over the sequence, an on-duty officer delivered a handwritten letter addressed directly to the Brooklyn Police Precinct. There was no sender listed. The envelope was plain white, bearing only a neat line written in blue ink.
Dear Detective Harlan, I am the parent of a student. My child has a difficult math problem that they cannot solve. I would like your help with it.
Inside the envelope was the exact same number matrix, written cleanly. Signed at the bottom, Shia's Wave. After the cyber unit successfully unlocked the laptop, we discovered that Sarah had frequently chatted with a mysterious account named Shia's Wave through a highly encrypted application that was nearly impossible to trace. The contents of their conversation sent chills down my spine, as if an invisible figure was manipulating everything from the shadows. Sarah wanted to exchange the lives of Emily and herself for the lives of Ryan and a fourth person whose identity remained unknown. She believed this was a game of justice remotely controlled by Shia's Wave, a game in which the winner would restore balance to all injustices. Sarah killed Emily in an explosive fit of jealousy, then murdered Anthony Russo to avenge Emily's painful past. Afterward, she committed suicide in her jail cell using rat poison she had hidden in advance, likely supplied by the mastermind through an insider. But Ryan survived. That meant the fourth person had to die to fulfill the twisted rules of the dark game. And indeed, only days after Sarah's death, Linda West was found dead in her own kitchen, poisoned by rat poison carefully mixed into her favorite afternoon tea, an imported English blend she drank every day. The chief was furious that people kept dying even while the case was under investigation. He gave me a 2-day deadline to solve it, or I'd be demoted to street patrol. I rushed to meet Hannah Brooks, the former roommate of Emily and Sarah at NYU. She was now a successful attorney in Manhattan, with a luxurious office on Madison Avenue. Hannah remembered their college days vividly.
Sarah had always harbored a quiet jealousy toward Emily. Emily often flaunted her wealthy boyfriend, luxury cars, expensive gifts, and lavish vacations. Sarah, on the other hand, came from a working-class family in New Jersey and had to work part-time at Starbucks just to cover her tuition and dorm expenses. That simmering envy had planted the seed of murderous intent in Sarah's heart long ago. It was only waiting for the right moment to erupt.
When the 2-day deadline expired, the case was suspended due to a lack of new evidence or any viable investigative leads. I was granted a few days of leave to rest and reflect. Alone in my small Brooklyn apartment, I couldn't sleep. My mind spun endlessly with pieces that refused to fit together, questions that had no answers. I had a powerful feeling that the list wasn't finished yet. There was still one final victim waiting in the darkness. At midnight, I secretly contacted Tom Reed. Together we visited a retired linguistics professor from Columbia University, an elderly man fascinated by wordplay, ciphers, and linguistic puzzles. He studied the number matrix and the letter for a long time before letting out a soft chuckle.
Jez wave is an extremely sophisticated English wordplay. When you rearrange the letters, they form Death List. It's a dark game in which the players are manipulated into exchanging lives according to rules set by the mastermind, like living pieces on a chessboard.
The matrix was gradually decoded after hours of analysis. 921 was Anthony Russo's birthday, September 21st. 34 was Linda West's house number -34 on Long Island, but 520 remained a major enigma, tormenting us for days. We surveilled hundreds of addresses containing the number 520 across New York, luxury hotel rooms in Manhattan, residential houses in Queens, even vehicle license plates statewide, but found nothing promising. Pressure from superiors intensified. They demanded progress. Night after sleepless night, I smoked until my throat burned raw. My mind stretched taut like a string about to snap. Then I suddenly remembered the fingerprint on the knife that killed Emily. I had assigned Tom to run it thoroughly against the national database, but he never gave me the final report, only said he was waiting for confirmation. I called him repeatedly. No answer. A sudden, crushing pain exploded in my head. My vision blurred. Everything went black. I collapsed onto the floor of my small Brooklyn apartment. When I regained consciousness, I found myself tightly bound inside an abandoned warehouse by the Hudson River. The stench of mold, river water, and rust filled the air. Tom Reed sat in front of me, his face shadowed beneath the weak beam of a flashlight resting on an old wooden crate. His eyes were red, filled with pain and a deep, barely concealed hatred. "Why is this happening, Tom?" I shouted, my voice hoarse from dryness and the lingering throb in my skull. Tom didn't answer right away. He sat in silence for a long moment, as if battling a violent inner struggle. Then he gave a bitter laugh, his voice trembling with anguish.
From my brother, Jack. Anthony Russo was my half-brother. Same father, different mother.
He told the story slowly, piece by piece, as if unburdening the weight he had carried for years. Tom grew up in a complicated family in Brooklyn. His biological father was a small-time loan shark with shady ties to Italian and Russian gangs. Anthony Russo, his half-brother, was the result of an affair. Raised in the underworld from childhood and quickly becoming a trusted enforcer for crime bosses. Tom, meanwhile, was taken away by his mother and given a more ordinary life. Though he always knew about the existence of that blood-related brother, as he grew older, Tom chose the path of law enforcement to wash clean his family's past, to prove he was different from the criminal bloodline he came from. But everything changed on that fateful day years ago, the rescue of Emily Carter from Anthony Russo. Tom's adoptive father was Mr. Morris, the longtime security guard at the Brooklyn precinct, the man who always brought fresh bagels and black coffee for the officers during long night shifts. Morris wasn't Tom's biological father, but he had adopted and loved him like a son since childhood. Especially after Tom's mother died of cancer, Morris was the only family Tom had left in the world. Morris's biological son was a passionate, young police officer who directly participated in the raid on the abandoned warehouse, where Anthony had been holding Emily captive over unpaid debts. During the rescue, Emily, completely unhinged after prolonged torture and repeated assault, struggled violently over the young officer's shoulder. As he carried her out of the pitch-dark warehouse, she screamed and clawed at him, causing him to lose his balance and fall. His head struck a wooden beam with a protruding nail. He died instantly. Emily later fell into a long, crushing depression. Mr. Mars carried the grief and resentment for the rest of his life. His honorable son had died unjustly while trying to save a girl destroyed by organized crime. For Tom, the hatred ran even deeper. Anthony Russo had not only indirectly caused the death of his adoptive brother, Morris's son, but had also destroyed Emily, the woman Tom had quietly loved from afar during their university years. Tom and Emily had shared a few classes at NYU, though they were never close. He watched her transform from a bright, radiant young woman into a shadow consumed by hatred, and he knew that Anthony, his own brother, was directly responsible. Tom was torn apart by a brutal inner conflict. On one side, blood ties. On the other, the justice he had sworn to uphold, and the pain of the family who had raised him. He could not bring himself to kill his own brother, but he could not forgive him either. So instead, Tom became Shield's Wave, a manipulator, in the shadows, creating a so-called game of justice in which everyone involved would destroy one another. Tom's true motive was a double revenge, layered with contradiction. Revenge for his adoptive family and trampled justice. Anthony had indirectly caused the death of Morris's son, the brother Tom considered his own. Tom wanted Anthony dead, but he didn't want to dirty his own hands as a police officer. Revenge for Emily and for himself. Tom had secretly loved her since college, helplessly watching his own brother ruin her life. He hated Anthony for turning the woman he admired into a permanent victim, erasing his biological family's dark legacy by letting Anthony die within the game. Tom severed his last blood connection to the underworld. At the same time, he made others, Sarah, Ryan, Linda, those who had indirectly benefited from or remained silent about the tragedy years ago, pay their price. In the end, Tom decided to devise a perfect and meticulous plan. He spent a full 10 years preparing everything, and the revenge had begun. Tom manipulated everything with precision. He planted the idea of life exchange in Sarah's mind through anonymous encrypted chats. He arranged for poison to be supplied through Mr. Morris. He steered Ryan to the crime scene at just the right time to mislead the investigation. He exploited Morris's grief to cover his tracks. He orchestrated it all without ever holding the knife himself, comforting his conscience with a lie.
I didn't kill anyone. I just let justice unfold.
Mr. Mars did participate, hiding poison for Sarah's suicide and assisting, in smaller ways, but only out of personal hatred. He never knew the full extent of the plan. Tom had used him completely.
I'm Shaw's Wave, the mastermind behind this case from beginning to end.
Tom whispered, his voice breaking.
but I never expected, after everything, that I would become the very thing I hated.
Tom raised the gun, but his hand was trembling.
520 is the address of this rundown warehouse. The place where you were supposed to die to keep you quiet. But I can't do it.
The gunshot cracked sharply through the darkness of the abandoned warehouse, but it wasn't aimed at me. The bullet shot up into the rusted ceiling, echoing like distant thunder. Tom Reed stood there, his hands still shaking around the gun, his red eyes staring at me for a long moment, his face twisted with pain, as if he himself were being tortured from within.
I can't do it, Jack. 15 years together. So many cases we solved. So many sleepless nights over cold cups of coffee at the precinct. I can't shoot you, even if you're the last name on the list. Even if you know everything.
Slowly, he lowered the gun. It slipped from his hand and clattered onto the damp concrete floor. Tom turned his back to me, his shoulders shaking. Outside, the rain over New York continued to pour heavily. The Hudson River slapped against the shore like a mournful cry for a tragedy without words. I lay there, still tightly bound, my heart pounding, trying to understand what had just happened. Tom, the partner I trusted more than anyone, had planned to kill me, yet in the end he couldn't pull the trigger.
Live, Jack.
Tom spoke without turning around, his voice hoarse with tears.
Live knowing that justice is not always clean. Was wrong. I thought revenge would bring peace, but it only turned me into a monster. Just like Anthony, my own brother. I used Mr. Morris. I used Sarah. I even used you. All to erase my family's dark past. But now, I realize nothing can truly erase it. Blood is still blood.
Then he walked toward the warehouse door, his tall figure slowly fading into the gray curtain of rain.
Don't look for me. I'll disappear. Maybe out of New York. Maybe out of this country entirely. But if one day you come across a similar case, remember this. The death list never truly ends. It only passes to someone else under a different name.
The warehouse door closed behind him with a dry creak. I lay there alone in the darkness, the ropes cutting into my skin, my mind spinning with questions that had no answers. In the final moment, brotherhood had defeated hatred, and Tom chose to spare my life. But at what cost? He would wander the rest of his life burdened by guilt, and I, the one who survived, would carry the weight of this truth forever. Later, I managed to rub the ropes against the sharp edge of a broken wooden chair until they snapped. I dragged myself out of the warehouse into the freezing rain. I never reported the full truth. I only said that I had been attacked by an unidentified suspect, and that Tom Reed had gone missing while pursuing the criminal. My superiors were suspicious, but there was no evidence. Mr. Morris, the poor old adoptive father, eventually confessed to part of his involvement. He was sentenced to prison for helping hide the poison. When I visited him one last time behind the bars, he wept. I only wanted revenge for my son, but the boy I raised used me. And I, Jack Harlan, am still a police officer, but every night, when I look out the window of my small apartment in Brooklyn, watching the streets of New York drown in the rain, I can't help but wonder, did Tom truly disappear forever, or one day, will his wave return under another name, with another list? Because the death list never truly ends. When justice is twisted by blood ties, silent love, personal hatred, and betrayed brotherhood,